The Arab League says the Palestinian Authority must assume full control over all Palestinian territories. Hamas rejects any attempt to separate Gaza and the West Bank. And Darfur's regional governor calls for protecting civilians in El Fasher.
كل الشكر لمصر العظيمة، مصر الشعب المصري العظيم الذي نحبه من أعماق قلوبنا نحن كفلسطينيين.
تقدير الكبير لدور مصر في منع أخطر مؤامرة كانت تجري، وهي التطهير العرقي والتهجير للشعب الفلسطيني.
موقف مصر الذي منع التهجير، موقف مصر الذي ساند القضية على مدار عشرات السنوات الماضية.
بات من الضروري والملح الآن التحرك وطنيا وفلسطينيا وبدعم من الشقيقة مصر من أجل بلسمة جراح شعبنا.
لا يفوتني في هذه اللحظة أن أشكر إخواننا في مصر على الجهود الكبيرة التي بذلت.
ما كنا نسعى إليه على امتداد الشهور الماضية بمساهمة نشطة من قبل إخوتنا في جمهورية مصر العربية كان يهدف إلى إقرار وإحلال وقف إطلاق النار.
طالما احتضنت القاهرة اللقاءات الوطنية بشكل دائم.
Egypt has dispatched its 59th aid convoy under the Zaid al-Izza Provision of Honor from Egypt to Gaza initiative from Rafah to Gaza via the Karam Abu Salim border crossing. The aid convoy carried over 10,000 tons of humanitarian and petroleum supplies to the Gaza Strip. The shipment also included 6,000 tons of food and flour, 2,700 tons of medical and relief items, and 1,500 tons of fuel as part of Egypt's ongoing support for Gaza's population. Since its launch on July the 27th, the initiative has delivered hundreds of thousands of tons of essential aid. Operating as Egypt's national mechanism for aid coordination, the Egyptian Red Crescent remains stationed at the Egyptian side of the Rafah border, never fully closed from Egypt's side, mobilizing 35,000 volunteers and facilitating the delivery of over 500,000 tons of relief to Gaza. The Arab League's permanent representative to the United Nations has stressed the need for the Palestinian Authority to assume full control over all Palestinian territories. Speaking at the UN Security Council session on the Middle East, he urged the Israeli government to abandon its ambitions of a greater Israel and called on Israel to cease all forms of aggression against Arab states, emphasizing that regional peace requires respect for sovereignty and international law. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has praised Egypt's substantial and valued efforts led by Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to end the Israeli aggression and secure a ceasefire in Gaza. During his meeting in Ramallah with Egyptian Ambassador Ihab Suleiman, Abbas conveyed his deep appreciation and greetings to President el-Sisi, thanking Egypt for its decisive role in halting the assault, preventing displacement and supporting Palestinian resilience. Ambassador Suleiman, in turn, delivered the greetings of President el-Sisi and an official invitation for Abbas to attend the inauguration of Egypt's Grand Museum on November 1st, 2025. President Abbas warmly welcomed the invitation, expressing his keenness to participate in this historic national event. Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi has reaffirmed the urgent need to maintain the ceasefire in Gaza and ensure the immediate entry of humanitarian aid. He stressed the importance of implementing all provisions of the Gaza Agreement and achieving full adherence to the ceasefire to sustain regional stability. Gaza-based health authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip has climbed to over 68,500 and over 170,300 were wounded. The Gaza Ministry of Health has reported that hospitals in Gaza Strip have received 8 dead and 13 others injured in the past 24 hours. And for more analysis, we now move to Riham Mursi in our newsroom. Riham.
Thank you, Sana. To help us analyze the current situation, we're joined from Cairo by the researcher in Israeli affairs and an Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs member, Dr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Qnews. Let's start off, sir, by asking, how does Egypt's sustained humanitarian aid initiative reflect Cairo's broader strategic vision towards the Gaza crisis and its long-term approach to Palestinian stability?
Okay, so good evening to you and to everyone who's watching. The Egyptian vision has always been clear, but the hope in the Palestinians, they are calling for a just and comprehensive solution, and it is the key for stability in the Middle East, and even the Israeli stability will come through such a just solution, which is having the Palestinians to keep their land and to get aid delivery and early healing without any displacement. And so we need this to be done urgently, because the Egyptian vision here was very clear about this. The previous conferences before this agreement, and so yeah, there are mechanisms that have been delivered from the Egyptian side to, and they're talking about a conference in November to reconstruct, and they're talking roles for everyone to have a part in this hard phase that we're going to face.
As you said, this is a look towards the future. Now, given the recent Arab League statements urging the Palestinian Authority to regain full control over the Palestinian territories, how realistic is this goal, given the fragmentation when it comes to governance in Gaza and among Palestinian factions in general?
I think that the statement here are calling to get the other factions to join the organization and then have elections within a year, and it is such a important phase, and the Israeli side are always willing and always want to reach the agreements. So a ceasefire agreement is being reached and hindered, like what happened with the agreement in Jan, and Netanyahu and his government did not keep their end of the deal, and so Egypt and the Palestinian side are now asked to basically stop Netanyahu and put him in his place, and he also needs to be some kind of so that he does not breach the agreement. And yeah, the Israeli side is a party here in this equation, because they know that Netanyahu wants to keep his chair, and he wants to escape accountability and the crimes that he's being faced with or through having the opinion shift to other operations that they're carrying, like in Lebanon and so on.
Well, as you said, sir, that the Israelis have broken, or violated ceasefires across the region. But we've also seen statements coming out from the Arab League warning against Israel's plans for the Greater Israel and the ambitions there. Do you think this plays into this context as well as the current Israeli domestic politics and possible implications for regional peace if these violations continue?
The main problem started in December 2022 when this government took the destruction government obtained there. And so, yeah, the talks that they were talking publicly about displacing the Palestinians out of their land. Egypt and Jordan interfered, and then other countries as well. They were talking about having their project of Greater Israel, and so yeah, they took advantage of the chaos in Syria, and so they took strategic advantage here, Lebanon, Jordan, and so on. And so yeah, all of these needs to be condemned and faced from the Western countries, because they do realize that such behavior threatens the stability in the region. It will threaten for fuel imports and exports and so on. And so this needs to stop, and everyone needs to see everything. Even the U.S. administration, they supported the displacement before, but now they are not supporting it and are coordinating with Egypt to prevent it.
Well, as you said there, that one of the goals of the Israelis was to forcibly displace the Palestinian people, but Egypt, along with other partners, helped in this. What kind of impact did Egypt's mediation under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi play in restraining the escalations and maintaining a minimal level of stability along the Gaza border?
Egypt has a long-standing experience with the Israeli side. We were able, with some hard solutions, diplomatic conflict and so on, we were able to get our full rights. And so this needs to happen again on the Palestinian side. And so after they get their rights back on the borders of 4th of June, they need to get back their land in exchange for peace. And so yeah, land for the agreement, land for peace. The two-state solution is the just solution here, and under the international legitimacy. And so, and Egypt is reaffirming it and having talks with USA, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all of these countries that can play a crucial regional role here. And so they have relationships with these countries. They have the ability to negotiate and to impose its vision, because the alternative here is very risky and dangerous. And we saw that it failed, and we saw that some countries were the consequences of this, not even the countries involved.
Okay, thank you so much. That was Dr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar from Cairo, the researcher in Israeli affairs and an Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs member. Thank you for joining us here on Qnews. And now we go back to you, Selma, in our studio.
Thank you, Rihim. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced that the state of emergency in the country's south, in place since the outbreak of the Gaza war 2 years ago, will officially end tomorrow. And Katz described the move as reflecting the new security reality in the south, according to Israel media reports. The decision is expected to ease restrictions and signal a shift towards normalcy for residents who have lived under heightened security measures since the conflict began. Hamas has affirmed that Gaza and the West Bank constitute a single national entity, rejecting any attempt to separate them. The movement stated that the mandate of the Administrative Committee in Gaza should end either through elections or the formation of a consensus Palestinian government. It emphasized that the issue of Palestinian detainees is a national cause of utmost importance, expressing hope that all detainees would be released in the current exchange deal. Hamas underscored that the detainees' issue and their liberation will remain a central topic in discussions among Palestinian leaders. Later, Hamas stated that significant challenges hinder efforts to locate and recover the remains of detainees, citing extensive changes to Gaza's terrain caused by the Israeli military campaign. The European Union has called on Israel to respect its obligations towards Palestinians in Gaza. The EU also reiterates its long-standing stance of non-recognition of Israeli sovereignty over occupied territories. And the European Union stressed that any attempt to annex the West Bank would be illegal and constitute a clear violation of international law.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
And Egypt's ambassador to Beirut, Ala Moussa, has held a press conference following his meeting with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, affirming Cairo's full support for Lebanon's stability and sovereignty. He said discussions focused on the need to ensure that weapons remain solely under state authority, emphasizing that Egypt backs the Lebanese president's balanced and objective approach to current challenges. The Egyptian ambassador warned that Israel's escalation in Lebanon requires urgent regional action to halt it, adding that calm in Gaza would positively impact the entire region. He noted Egypt's intensive efforts to help Lebanon overcome its current crisis, highlighting strong political coordination and broad cooperation between the two countries. Aoun expressed readiness to enter negotiations towards a settlement amid ongoing Israeli violations. U.S. envoy Morgan Ortagus has arrived in Beirut, where she joins the meeting of the committee supervising the ceasefire's implementation on October the 29th. Her visit follows an inspection tour along the Lebanese-Israeli border with Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, amid intensified Israeli airstrikes targeting southern and eastern Lebanon. The Israeli occupation military has accused the United Nations peacekeepers in southern Lebanon of shooting down one of its drones during an intelligence gathering mission in Kfar Qila. UNIFIL responded that an Israeli drone flew over its patrol in an aggressive manner and that peacekeepers took necessary defensive countermeasures to neutralize it. The UN mission added that a second drone later dropped a grenade near its patrol, followed by a tank shot, but no injuries or damage occurred. UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Hennes-Plaskart, has begun a visit to Israel as part of her regular consultations on the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1701/2006. And during her visit, she is set to meet the senior Israeli officials to discuss recent developments, particularly those related to the resolution's implementation and the ceasefire arrangement that took effect in November 2024, with the aim of strengthening security and stability along both sides of the Blue Line. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati has held calls with his counterparts from France, Greece, Saudi Arabia and Jordan to discuss developments in Sudan and Palestine. And the talks addressed the deteriorating situation in Sudan's El Fasher, emphasizing coordination to support ceasefire and humanitarian efforts. Abdelati further stressed building on the outcomes of the Sharm el-Sheikh Peace Summit and the Gaza ceasefire to advance recovery and reconstruction efforts. He also reviewed preparations for Egypt's upcoming international conference on Gaza's early recovery. Darfur's regional governor has called for protecting civilians and disclosing the fate of the displaced in El Fasher. He urged an independent probe into atrocities committed by the Rapid Support Forces. That comes as the United Nations demanded safe humanitarian corridors for civilians, as fierce clashes between the Sudanese army and the RSF left the situation in El Fasher described as catastrophic. The Sudanese Doctors Network has reported that the Rapid Support Forces targeted dozens of civilians in El Fasher and looted medical facilities and pharmacies. In a statement, the network said the RSF operatives stormed hospitals and clinics in blatant violation of international law. It urged the United Nations and the World Health Organization to act immediately to protect civilians and hold perpetrators accountable. The Kremlin has said that Russia will continue to act in accordance with its national interests after the U.S. President Donald Trump urged President Vladimir Putin to end the war in Ukraine instead of testing a nuclear-powered missile. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that there was nothing in Russia's test of the Burevestnik missile that should strain relations with Washington. He added that ensuring national security remains a top priority, citing what he called Europe's Russophobic, aggressive and belligerent attitude. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met with his North Korean counterpart Choi Sun-hui in Moscow, and the video shared by the ministry's spokeswoman Maria Zakharova showed the ministers greeting each other at the start of the talks. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Choi is also expected to meet with President Vladimir Putin following her discussions with Lavrov. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has said that Ukraine and its allies will prepare a ceasefire plan within the next 10 days. The initiative follows a US-backed proposal to freeze fighting along the current front lines and pave the way for peace talks. Meanwhile, Zelensky said Kiev is requesting Tomahawk missiles and similar systems from Washington that require minimal training. In that context, he noted those weapons would boost Ukraine's defenses and pressure Moscow to negotiate. Following the U.S. proposal, Western officials accelerated efforts to draft a roadmap for a lasting stability. U.S. President Donald Trump has rejected the suggestion that he could seek a third term by running as vice president, calling the idea too cute. And speaking to reporters, Trump said he would be legally allowed to do so, but added, "I wouldn't do that. The people wouldn't like that. It wouldn't be right." And asked about potential Republican contenders for 2028 presidential race, Trump praised Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance, calling them great people and unstoppable as a team. When pressed on whether he was ruling out a third term entirely, Trump offered a characteristically teasing response, "You'll have to tell me."
I think if they ever formed a group, it would be unstoppable. I really do. I believe that. I would love.
U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Japan for his first meeting with new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, a protege of the late Shinzo Abe. Trump and Abe had bonded over golf during his previous visits. Trump spent Sunday in Malaysia attending a regional summit with trade and central focus of his Asia trip. U.S. and Chinese officials said on Sunday they reached an initial agreement for a potential trade deal with Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, aiming to finalize it during their upcoming meeting. The visit comes amid a U.S. government shutdown, leaving many federal workers facing missed paychecks, flight disruptions, and concerns over potential interruptions to federal food aid. Egypt has welcomed the ceasefire agreement reached between Thailand and Cambodia under the U.S. mediation on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. In a statement by the Foreign Ministry, Egypt described the accord as a vital step towards strengthening regional security, stability, and cooperation. The Foreign Ministry praised U.S. President Donald Trump's efforts in facilitating the peaceful resolution of the conflict and reaffirmed Egypt's consistent stance on the need for dialogue and diplomacy to resolve disputes and support all initiatives promoting peaceful settlement of conflicts. Brazilian President Lula da Silva has celebrated his 80th birthday during the ASEAN Gala dinner hosted by the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim and his wife, Dr. Wan Aziza Wan Ismail, on the sidelines of the 47th ASEAN Summit. And speaking to reporters, Lula joked about his milestone, saying he hopes to live to 120 and lamenting the lack of birthday presents. The gala welcomed world leaders and delegates attending the summit. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. But before we wrap up, here's a recap of the top stories making headlines this hour. The Arab League says the Palestinian Authority must assume full control over all Palestinian territories. Hamas rejects any attempt to separate Gaza and the West Bank. And Darfur's regional governor calls for protecting civilians in El Fasher. And for more stories and live updates, follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG. And from all of us here, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more news on Qnews. Thank you.